Whatever you do not hit record.
Can we start again?
Nope, we can't do that. Because this is Pop Culture Yearbook. And on this show, we pick pieces of pop culture that were important to us in a given year. We then discuss memories and dig into those movies, albums, shows, and more. I'm Brad.
I'm Pete.
And I'm Giff.
And we're back.
Yay!
And it's just the three of us tonight.
Oh, my God. Just the three of us.
You know, it's nice to have guests, but it's also kind of nice to get back to basics, too, you know?
Right?
It is. I'm glad they're gone.
Well said.
So our last 3 weeks, we had
I'm kidding.
some pretty impressive guests, and it was a lot of fun. But tonight, it's just going to be us.
We have.
But the reason we had some of those guests on, because besides the fact that they're just good people, was because they have supported our show. And you could do it too. Right,
This
Giff?
could be you.
How can you do that?
Tell them.
Well, what you can do is check out our link tree on Facebook or Twitter or any of the sites that you can find our great podcast, and go to our Buy Me a Beer page. And on there, there's different membership levels, or you can just hit the Buy Me a Beer icon and donate to the cause here at Pop Culture Yearbook. And there's a few benefits of doing that. There's some extracurricular videos that we put up there.
And those are good.
Damn
and
right.
You get video with those. So
That's right. So you get to see our pretty faces. And
Yes.
one of the other things that you can do is you can also contact us and ask to be on the show. You can suggest a topic and come on and join us for a rousing good time here on Pop Culture Yearbook.
Yeah.
You son of a bitch, I'm in.
We love anybody that's ever supported us, even if it's only been, just interacting on the old internets. But
That's
The
right.
old internet.
if you've actually given time to give money or then be part of this show, then you're just the tops.
That's right. Or even face to face. I had a nice run in with a classmate of my brother this last weekend.
Oh,
Gilling.
is that right? Yes.
He went out of his way to say, hey, thanks for doing the podcast. He likes what we're doing here. He thought it was cool. So I informed him of some upcoming episodes and told him, you got to get on. You got to listen when Johnny's on, because he knows Johnny from, back home in Tylertown.
Hopefully he did that, because there's no time in podcast world, and that was 2 weeks ago.
That's true. That's true. Yes, there's no time in podcast world. I forgot about that.
As you like to say.
All right.
And nobody throws a better party than Gilling.
No. He does. Yes. It's a great time.
Wait a minute, Pete. You've told me before that we throw the best parties here.
He's just being nice.
I don't know if it's anything compared to Gilfest.
Nobody
They're
throws
different kinds
a
of
better
parties.
party in Tyler. Let's put it that way.
They're a whole different genre of party.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't like being lied to. Being pandered to. Unless it's this podcast, then you can pander all you want.
Yeah, we are
Yes.
very susceptible to flattery on this podcast.
All right. How you guys been doing?
Great.
Good.
Yeah, I've been okay. Thank you for asking.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, for me, we're recording this. I have 6
right.
days of school left, and we're going to Valley
God.
Fair on one of those days. So I only have 5 left
Hey,
with the kids.
what?
And
I'm
I don't
going to
think.
Valley Fair on Sunday.
Oh, are you?
I am. It's Boston
Valley Fair,
Scientific
to the
Book.
layperson, is the local amusement park in Minnesota.
That's right.
Yes, it's our Disney World.
Yeah.
The Minnesota
Six
Disney
Flags.
World. Yes, It's more like Six Flags, actually. Yes.
So I am just counting down the days, and I can't get out of there soon enough.
Well,
Of course, you love teaching. You love your students.
we all thank you. We all thank you as a teacher. We thank you for your service educating our children. That's
It is a
great work
service,
that you
that's
do.
for sure.
Right.
Yes.
Thanks, Pete. I respect whatever the heck you do too, because I still couldn't explain it.
I can't either.
He's a transponster.
He's a transponster. What is Brian Peterson's job?
Yeah.
Podcast.
You let me know when you figure it out.
Right.
That's what I'm supposed to be doing.
All right. Well, speaking of
Anyway.
Pete, tonight,
Speaking
Pete,
of
you're
me.
gonna you picked it, and you're gonna take us back to 1987 in your own way. So, how about you start that little journey here?
did. Not only am I going to take you back to 1987, I'm going to take you back to like 1929
30.
or whatever,
Ah, yeah,
1930,
the
whatever
old
year this was.
dirty
Mhm.
30s, the
So
20s.
one of my favorite movies, in the years after this came out, in my teen years, that I could watch over and over again. I absolutely love this movie. It was a rare movie in the sense that it wasn't a comedy by any means or anything like that. Most of the movies that we all loved were comedies, but this was a very serious movie. But it's very rewatchable. I love the actors. I love the acting. I love all of the cinematography, just the way that this whole movie is made. And that movie is The Untouchables.
Oh, I was wondering if you were going to say the title.
I was going to get there. Yeah, I was going to get there before the episode
It's a
ended.
long walk.
Right?
It's a long walk.
So I wanted to build up the suspense, but
The
this
Untouchables.
this is one that I know my mom has always actually talked about how her two favorite actors of all time were Kevin Costner and Sean Connery.
Oh, wow.
Separately, they're just great actors. And now this, and I
Your
think
mom is
all of us
cool.
love those two actors. That's right. Hi, Mom. And now this is the movie. I think all of us can agree that those two actors are just amazing actors. And not only that, you also have.
Can we just pause there for a
Robert
minute
De
since you
Niro.
brought it up?
What? Sure, go ahead.
Can we talk about Kevin Costner for a few minutes?
We can. I was just going to finish up on the cast that you also get Robert De Niro in this movie, which is an added bonus. But now,
I call him Bobby
Brad,
De
why don't you tell us a little bit about Kevin Costner?
I just was wondering because when you picked this movie, I thought that was good because I have this little list of like things that I would like to pick in the future for the years that we haven't done. And like one of the people who kept coming up was Kevin Costner. And it was like, so if I did, what movie would I pick? And I even thought about just
Waterworld.
Kevin. No, it wouldn't be that one. I even for a time thought about would I just maybe pick Kevin Costner in general for a year and like we would just talk about him in a couple movies or something. Because he was just for me, and De Niro was too, kind of like right after this. But Kevin Costner was just such a central figure in my young movie watching experience. So this movie comes out, I'm 11 years old, but like Bull Durham comes out the next year, Field of Dream comes out the next year, Dances with Wolves, and then God, what am I forgetting? There's another big one in there, isn't there?
Thieves.
Well, I didn't
Robin
like
Hood,
that movie.
that was a big one.
But between the baseball movies, especially, I mean, this guy was No Way
Tin
Out
Cup?
was a good movie from this time, and then Tin Cup comes out.
Oh, Tin Cup.
And it feels like he never really went away. He had his down parts. Like I was not a fan of Waterworld or any of those movies in the mid '90s until Tin Cup came out.
Mhm.
Now he's back in Yellowstone, which Gifford you watch.
I love it.
Love that show, and I just think he's one of the coolest guys. And sometimes people maybe say he's not a great actor or he gets a little bad rap for some of these movies because maybe he tried to do too much, but I love him, and he was like maybe my first real like movie star like hero, like that I knew as a kid and just loved. So being in this movie, it was a good point where I thought, well, hey, I want to at least give him some credit and say thank you, Kevin Costner.
Yes,
You're awesome.
I just think that the criticism on him, and I agree with everything that you said. I think that the reason he's probably not viewed as negatively or he is viewed negatively by some is that I don't think you can say that he has the range of other actors. Like he always kind of plays the same kind of guy, and you think of Tom Hanks, and he can play just all sorts of different characters. But Kevin Costner in every movie, I would say he has kind of the same personality in most of his movies, and that's probably the criticism. And he's a great actor. I love him, but I just think that that's probably the criticism on it.
Well, I think that, and then I mean, Dances with Wolves obviously won all the awards, but I think most people didn't consider him a great actor in it. But I think it was just he got so big there for a time. And to me, Robin Hood, I never watched it until recently because my wife wanted to watch it. He just seemed so out of place to me in
He
there.
did.
Yeah,
And then
Alan
Waterworld
Rickman.
just kind of like became this joke,
Sure.
you know. And then he did that Postman movie that, I
Yep.
mean, so it's like he tried to do too much. And if you stay in
Right.
your lane with the sports movies and the other movies, I mean, but good for you. He had the
Yep.
chance, he tried it, and he didn't lose his career either, because I mean, he's still huge and people love him still today for what he's doing now. So
Yeah. Well,
go
and
for it, man.
For me, two of his movies that I love the most are Bull Durham and Tin Cup, and they're very similar characters.
Correct. Those
You
are
know,
for sure.
Mhm.
And so,
Yeah.
I mean, I loved Bull Durham from the get-go, and then Tin Cup was 11 years later, I believe,
Like
87 to 86
90.
to 87.
96.
Okay, so 10 years, somewhere around there.
Bull Durham was 88, so it's
Okay.
8 years.
So anyway, but still, to bring that type of character back, 8 years later, I was all for it. I absolutely loved it. So yeah, he's high on my list as well. There's so many of his movies that I've watched repeatedly over the years. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah. And then so you brought up Robert De Niro too, and like in 1990 when Goodfellas came out, I mean, then I went through an obsession with him for 4 or 5 years where I went back and watched all the old ones, and then Cape Fear was like, I mean, that was the shit
movie. Yep.
I mean, Goodfellas
Yes.
is too, but God, I love Cape Fear, and so it contains two of like my all-time favorite actors right there.
Right. Well, and Sean Connery's no slouch either.
Well, and he's great. I just don't know as many movies of his, but yeah, he's.
Oh, you weren't a big Bond guy?
No, I've never seen any of his. I've never.
Okay. See, I
know
like
Rock
his Bond movies.
And The Hunt for Red October. I mean, those are.
October's phenomenal.
So.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Pete.
But all right, no. Are you guys ready to dive into the movie, The Untouchables?
Oh well, if I had
got
a couple other things before it starts.
Okay, well then you shouldn't have said. Okay, go on, Pete.
Well, I thought you had more like pre-stuff, Pete.
Well, no, I mean just the pre stuff. I guess we'll get into it when we get into the movie. But I just thought, it's a fun movie to watch, and it also has that edge to it. I loved it. But I'll let you get back to your pre stuff.
Well, I was going to say, so I guess you already said why you picked it, but like for me, I like that you picked it because I think I've always said I love this movie, and like I did, but I think I've only seen it one time. So,
oh my God.
Yeah, I know I watched it and loved it, and I know a lot of the scenes, but like watching it again now is like, okay, this is my chance to finally watch it again. So I really looked forward to that. You did not mention, I don't think, Andy Garcia in the cast.
Oh yeah, Andy Garcia was great too.
But the other two I had just were
one of my favorite
the director
characters.
Brian De Palma.
Yep.
Was known for some more arty, smaller movies kind of at the time, but this kind of bigger budget one helped him finance maybe what he liked more. But he did wasn't it The Bonfire of the Vanities? It was
he did Bonfire of the Vanities, which was
so that's kind of where I learned about him from the big flop of that.
Flop. Yep. But I mean, he did Carrie. He did Scarface, Casualties of War, did the first Mission Impossible movie, and the Black Dahlia back in 2006. I mean, but the big thing that he did for the movie watching world is he gave De Niro his first film credit in 1968 movie called Greetings.
Wow,
really?
There's a deep cut there. Good job.
Yeah,
that is well done.
He brought him back for this. He was the first choice of De Palma to play Capone. Oddly enough, though, Bob Hoskins was the second choice.
You mean Bob Hoskins?
Hoskins. I actually have it written down with the O, Hoskins. And he was actually paid $200,000 for his contract fee after he was let go.
Kindly leave.
And he wrote back to De Palma asking him if there was any other movies he didn't want him in.
Yeah.
So,
well, Bob Hoskins, I guess Roger Rabbit came out after this, but he was in a few big ones around the time. I mean, I always viewed him as more of a comedic actor, so that's kind of interesting.
I could have saw him for this role, though. I mean, he's got that gruffy.
Well, and it is, as you said, it's a serious movie, Pete. But going back and watching it, like I was surprised, like how kind of campy it is.
It is a little campy, and it's deliberate.
I think it's deliberate in a way that it's like it fits that kind of old timey feel and everything. But
Right.
There's times you're watching it like, well, oh yeah, well, that's interesting.
Mhm.
The other person I wanted to bring up was David Mamet, who wrote the script,
Yeah.
because I brought up earlier when we talked about Steve Martin, who I guess I should have said he was my first true
That's right.
actor.
We'll forgive you.
But I guess I'm looking at comedy and drama differently. So anyway,
Right.
but he wrote the movie The Spanish Prisoner that I told you guys to watch. That was the dramatic Steve Martin movie from the mid 90s. And he also wrote Glengarry Glen Ross,
Oh, that's a good one.
Wag the Dog, Hannibal. So I mean, he's done a
Oh.
lot of big
Yep.
ones. But I just know his name pops out to me from The Spanish Prisoner every time I see it.
Okay.
So when I saw he wrote this, I was like, oh, that's another good reason to watch it.
Well, the other thing I wanted to bring up before we get in the movie was some of the awards that were this movie was nominated for. Sean Connery, of course, won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor for his role in this movie. He also won.
I did not know that.
It's,
Wow.
it's the only Oscar that Sean Connery owns.
Yep.
Really?
And he also won the Golden Globe that year.
For this movie, wow.
Yep. And then it was also nominated for Best Art Direction and Best Costume Design and Best Original Score. And it also got Golden Globe and Grammy nominations for the original score.
That's
and
funny, too.
The way the movie starts out, I mean, right away with that music.
Well,
it's
okay.
just
My
so
first
good.
note was about that music. It totally
Mhm.
reminded me of a different movie that came out a year after this.
Okay.
Completely different, and it was like a different version of the same song.
Which
Do
movie?
you have any guess? It's a director we talked about once.
1988.
It's a director that we.
It was a
talked about
movie that we
once.
talked about from
Once.
1989.
I got nothing.
All right. It sounded to me exactly like Beetlejuice. Go back and watch
really?
it. Go back and watch it
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the opening of Beetlejuice, only just, a different
little bit.
version.
Yep.
Huh,
I'll give you
so-
that.
Rewatch it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we
Before we
talked
get
about
into the
Batman.
movie,
That was my clue, Tim Burton. There you go.
Sure.
I do want to get into because we were talking about Kevin Costner. And before we dive into the movie, did you know that Costner was not the first choice to play that role? And by the way, this was basically Kevin Costner's first big movie where he kind of busted onto the scene as an A-list actor, but was not the first choice. Any guesses? real
He
quick?
was also not the second choice.
Sounds like
There
Giffy's got
was
something here.
I've got a list here of all of them that were considered.
1987. I don't know. These are always too hard to do.
Don Johnson was the first choice.
Oh my God.
Don
really?
Johnson was on the list. But,
Speaking of Tin Cup.
Mhm.
I had actually read that Harrison Ford was the first
Okay.
choice for the
Oh,
role.
that
is
makes
the one I
sense.
came across.
See, I had
and I
Don
could see him
Johnson.
doing-
Coming off his big scenes in Witness.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, and I had Don Johnson and Mickey Rourke as choices
Rourke.
1 and 2. And for those who don't know, if you want to see those two in a spectacular movie together, just go watch Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man. Those are our two leads in that movie. So
I remember
The rest of the list that of people considered that I found was Mickey Rourke, Mel Gibson, Don
Okay.
Johnson, Jack Nicholson, and Michael Douglas. I could not
That's a
see Jack
veritable
Nicholson
who's who.
in the role of Elliot Ness. I'm sure he would have done great, but to me, Jack Nicholson could have been one of the bad guys, like
Sure.
De Niro's role as Capone. I wouldn't have seen him as Elliot Ness.
the
but-
clean cut, like the choir
Right.
boy type guy.
And I love Jack Nicholson, and
Yeah,
it's not
yeah.
a knock on him. It just doesn't seem to be the right fit for me.
Oh, I tend to agree with that. He'd be a
I
great.
love Schnelker.
He'd be a good Capone, or he would have been a great Nettie as well,
Yes.
or Nitty. That would have been a heck of a role for him too.
So getting into the movie, you started to talk about already. I just love how it opens up with that dramatic kind of foreboding music in the intro, and
Mhm.
just how it kind of goes back and forth. And I think there might have been a trombone in there, even or two. But
Yes.
but it sets up the movie perfectly. It's sort of that dark 1930s style. That's exactly what you need for this movie. Then we go into the opening scene. And the first thing that you see is Robert De Niro as Al Capone, is where he's getting shaved. And I think the first 5 minutes of the movie sets up so perfectly who we're dealing with in Al Capone here, who he is as a person, because he's getting shaved. He's kind of joking. He can have one personality, but when he gets cut shaving, you could just see the fear in the barber's eyes. And so that was kind of the point there, was to establish, oh shit, he thought he was going to be killed or something, because he knew that De Niro De Niro as Capone could be joking around 1 minute, and then the shit could hit the fan the next, right, which we get into in very graphic detail later.
Right.
But that kind of sets it up. Yes.
Well,
exactly.
And not only that, Pete, but it also sets up the way that he is received into the community. He's sitting there talking to reporters. Like the reporters are welcomed in. He's more than happy to talk to them, plead his innocence to them about how he's just a businessman. Never says that he's not guilty of bootlegging per se, but he's just he's fulfilling a need that the community is asking for. So he is very accessible to the media of the town, which of course I wrote down right away. Harris from Major League is one of the reporters that's talking to him. So one other thing I noticed right away in the movie as the credits were rolling, the wardrobe was supplied by Giorgio Armani. So that was kind of interesting.
De Niro actually had Al Capone's original tailor tailor his outfit, and to the extent that he had to be wearing silk underwear, that the same style of underwear that Capone would have actually worn, because that's how, even though you never see the underwear in the movie, that's how into the role De Niro gets in all of his roles, really, and this one in particular.
Actors.
But yeah, that to your point, Gifford, it establishes how Capone has the city of Chicago in the palm of his hand, right? Just by his, he's a businessman, and he also can be very threatening as well. That whole scene sort of just established all of that right away. We then turn to the pharmacy, where a little girl goes and gets something for her mom, who is at home sick with a cold or something like that. Then there's a gangster that walks in. You know that there's something up with the guy. There's a gangster walks in, leaves his briefcase, and you can see he pushes a little button or turns a switch or something. And she picks it up and says, "Hey, mister, you forgot your briefcase." And then boom, the whole place blows up.
Yeah.
Well, I should back up a little bit before that, because he tried to do business with this guy working at the owner of the pharmacy, and he refused to do it, and so that was why it wasn't going to work out. So that's why he blew it up. I think it was a pharmacy, right? Or it was a general store or something.
It's a pharmacy, and it sets the tone pretty quickly for any viewer to know that this movie isn't going to pull punches.
Right.
I mean, we're going to watch a little girl holding a briefcase, trying innocently enough to give it back to the owner, and is just absolutely blown to bits.
Yes.
So that's pretty jarring right off the bat.
Absolutely. Then we turn to Elliot Ness, our hero, who is the main character in the movie. It's Kevin Costner's role. He is the cop that's trying to bring De Niro down, and so this is all happening, and this really this incident where the girl was blown up, you could tell that really tugs at his heartstrings for a couple of reasons. Because A, he does have his own girl, probably about the same age, at home, and B, early on in the movie, the mother of the little girl comes and talks to him, and basically tells her story a little bit, and everything, and it sort of sets it up, and he's like inspired that he's got to go get these people, right?
Wait,
and so
were there women in this movie?
There were women in this movie. Yes.
Not many.
Not very many. Again, 87 movie about gangsters. Not a whole lot of not a whole lot of women characters in this film. One of the things I would like to say just off the bat, as far as the accuracy of this movie, Elliot in this movie, he has a young girl, and then later on, shortly into the movie, his wife gives birth to a second child. Elliot Ness was actually married 3 times in his life, only had one child, and that child was adopted. So throughout this movie, there's quite a few inaccuracies, despite the fact that Elliot Ness was a real person and worked for the Treasury Department and did go after Al Capone during Prohibition in Chicago. But that's about as close as they get. It was kind of interesting. They had the last surviving member of the Untouchables on to be a consultant for the film. But there were most of the main scenes in this movie were not factual.
Right. We call that artistic licensing.
Yes. But those
I
scenes,
never considered that they were factual. So.
Right. And the scenes that we're talking about are awesome scenes, pivotal to the movie, and those are the ones you think of when you watch this film or think about this film. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, there are some basic principles that are factual, which we'll get into as we get to those parts in the scene. And I have some of those written down. I'll clarify that. But then we do get to, after the girl dies in the explosion, we cut to Elliot Ness. And he establishes also right away who he is as a character, at least in the movie. Probably not in real life, but he establishes that this is what he is, his mission is. And he sets the tone early that he's the one in charge. He addresses his crew of police officers and says, it doesn't matter what his opinion is. Prohibition is the law, and we all have to be pure. And he goes, I know that you guys might take a drink every now and then, but from now on, we got to be pure. And you can tell, and he says it a couple of times, he is going to try to operate within the law to bring down Capone, which is sort of a ballsy thing to say, because you are not going to bring down Capone by staying within the law. So then he gets word that there's an import shipment from of Canadian whiskey that is going to be at this warehouse somewhere. And of course, the Canadian whiskey, all the crates are going to be marked with red maple leaves, right?
Maple leaves, yes.
So they raid this one warehouse and everything, and of course it turns out to be a fake. He opens one up, and then there's an umbrella, like a Japanese or Asian umbrella, and it's not whiskey anywhere. So I didn't know if it was supposed to be intended that like it was a decoy, like that was intentionally set up by Capone, or if it was just bad luck.
That was intentionally set up by Capone, because 2 things here. Right before the raid, there's a gentleman from the newspaper there ready to take pictures. Well, how does he know about the raid in the first place, unless he's tipped off? Right. And then the next morning, in the newspaper, they have the picture that was taken of him holding this umbrella over his head, looking like an idiot. And Capone is just so pleased with it,
He's
so
laughing
he knew
at the newspaper when he sees it. Yeah,
I always took it as that was an absolute setup to take a little starch out of Ness's shorts and let him know that this isn't. You're not just going to walk in here and do your thing, and I'm going to go down easy. Okay, so that's the way I took it.
Okay, I'll buy that. I just wasn't sure either way.
Well, I'm not selling it, Pete. It's not for sale. It's just what I'm
saying. So then on the way home, of course, now he's feeling all dejected and everything after just being embarrassed on the front page of the newspaper. He's walking home and crossing a bridge, and he encounters a cop who we know to be Sean Connery, a character named Malone in this movie, who I love this interaction. It sets up who Malone is as well. These characters are so well established the first time that you see him, which is one of the great things about the movie. And so basically they have this interaction, and you can tell that they don't like each other much, which means in the end, they're going to get along great and love each other, just like Brad and Gifford in 5th grade.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Just
So
like it. Welcome to Chicago. This town stinks like a whorehouse at Low Tide.
So
That's what I said to Giff.
I get to be Costner in this situation.
So they have this little interaction where he knows he's Costner or Ness gets this impression right away that this must be a good beat cop that knows what he's talking about. And it's established by the fact that what did he say? He's a Treasury officer.
Yes.
And then Malone says, okay, be on your way, or whatever it was. And he goes, wait a minute, you didn't even check my credentials or my badge or anything. He goes, who would pretend to be that who was not?
Right. Yeah. Who would pretend to be a Treasury officer?
Right. Yeah. Right. So I thought that was pretty funny. And so it's funny, and it establishes that he's got the street smarts, and and that kind of stuff. And
there's one other good line here too that's very fitting for us, because he asks Elliot Ness a question, and he's kind of looking for an answer, and Connery says, "Don't search for the yearbook answer."
That's later. That's when yearbook. That's a little bit later.
All right, I wrote it down here. I'm sorry.
That's when
this is where it is in my notes.
Yeah.
That's the later scene when we meet Andy Garcia.
Yes. Irregardless.
Oh my God! Did you really just say that?
Did you even watch the movie, Brad?
To all the listeners, I know that's not a word.
Well, and here's the one thing I thought
I wanted to include it because it's our title of our podcast, guys.
I got you.
You're just
caught my ear.
So one thing I found interesting in this scene is that he's still on his way home after the raid, and he's holding the paper of the picture of him that night. No, because he said, I had a bad day at work today. That's what he tells Malone.
Well, they put out editions of the newspaper like twice a day back then.
I know, but
it was pretty late at night.
Yeah, that's what I thought was weird.
Whatever. They put out the newspaper every hour back then.
I thought about that, and I took it to be the next day, and he had a bad day because it was printed in the paper. And so on that day. So, and then we close out kind of that scene with Malone's famous line. He asked him what he was doing, and he goes, "I'm on my way home." And Malone says, "Well, then you've just fulfilled your first rule of police work. Make sure when your shift is over, you go home alive," which I thought was a great line.
Yes.
So then we go back to Al Capone, who's in a suite, and you just kind of get the feel of the lifestyle. And there's a quick glimpse at the very beginning. It opens up on the accountant.
Yes.
And so you wouldn't have noticed who it was unless you've watched the movie a second or third time, because he's not in the rest of the movie. And we're talking about Capone's accountant. He comes back into play later on.
Yep.
At the train station, which is way later in the movie, but you do get that first glimpse of him, and you kind of get, and this is where Capone is reading the newspaper. He gets the paper and laughing and eating breakfast in bed at what's going on. So you know that at this point Capone has the upper hand.
Yep.
So, but then we go back to Ness, who's using the headline as bulletin board material, right? He cuts it out.
Yep. No, somebody posted it on his door. He comes back into work that day.
That's right.
And somebody had cut it out of the newspaper, taped it to his door as, mocking him, somebody from the force. And he takes it off his door and he puts it on his bulletin board in his office as motivation to keep fighting the good fight.
Right. Now we get to this is actually the point now where he's in his office, and this is where the mother of the girl actually comes in and talks to him that I've already alluded to earlier.
Yep.
And so now he's extra motivated. He decides now he wants to go back to Malone and ask for help. And you know what this scene reminded me of? A lot of the scene in Field of Dreams, where he goes back to he goes to find James Earl Jones, goes to his apartment, and it's like this old curmudgeonly guy that doesn't want to talk to him. He doesn't want anything do with what he's
Right.
trying to accomplish. Right. That is Malone. That's Malone's first reaction.
Yep.
So,
well, and he goes to Malone because obviously he knows that the policemen on his task force are on the take. He's not going to get real information from them. He needs somebody that knows the city, knows the police force, knows crime in the city, and is uncorrupted himself.
correct.
And that's really why he goes to him, because he can be a trusted partner in his crusade against Capone.
Right. Yep. And then there's a couple of really great scenes. Well, then we do go back to his office, and then finds that the bureau has sent him this nerdy accountant guy.
Mhm.
He's expecting, he needs more men. He needs good men, and they send him this as accountant, and you can tell he's just like, what the hell is this?
Right.
This is not what I need. I need a guy that can carry a gun.
Now,
And
Pete, were you surprised that this character's name was not Brian?
yes,
I mean, let's be honest.
Yep. So then we get that little brief introduction to him, and then
and he's the one who brings up the thought of going after Capone for tax evasion. They can't pin murders on him or the bootlegging enterprise, but he's the one who brings up the thought that
This
if we
is
can
Oscar Wallace we're talking about now, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I like him.
Yes.
If we can tie him to tax evasion, it's not sexy, but it's got hooks, and we can prosecute for tax evasion.
And I think early on, nobody really takes him seriously because it's
Right.
like, come on, this is Al Capone, right? This is not what we're gonna get him on. So then we go to one of my favorite scenes in a movie, or sequences, right, where he does reconnect with Malone, and they go to a church. And an interesting fact about this scene was originally supposed to be filmed out in the street, but it was Sean Connery's idea, saying, no, these guys would not have this conversation in the street. He felt they would be safer and more private if they went into a church.
Mm-hmm.
So they're sitting in a pew of the church, and then they have this conversation, and Ness is like, we're going to do this by the law and everything, and now Connery, or Malone, it has his street smarts, and he's starting to impose his street smarts right now on Ness, saying, you know what, if he carries a knife, you carry a gun. If he sends one of yours to the hospital, you send one of his to the morgue. And the morgue.
That's the Chicago way.
That's the Chicago way. Yes. Mm-hmm. And so that was what the blood oath is what they took, right? So
yeah, I always thought a blood oath, you needed to like have blood, like you'd cut your
I thought so
palm,
too.
each person would cut their palm and shake hands or something. And so I thought that was a little strange, but it's a great scene, like you say, Pete. It sets up how far Ness will have to go, and what he's going to have to get uncomfortable with the situation. He's going to have to get messy. He's going to have to get bloody if he's serious about taking on Capone.
Is this right before we get Andy Garcia then?
Yes.
Okay. Hold your
I'm
wad
just trying
there.
to keep track, because you guys have the details down far more than I have.
You're jumping to the Andy Garcia scene here.
Well, my note on Andy Garcia is, what a cool effing guy. So I can't wait to get to him. Yes. He's just a cool guy.
Well, let's get to the cool effing guy, because if you're worried about getting a rotten apple, don't take it from the barrel. You take it from the tree.
Get it off the tree. That's the next line, right? But the one line still in the church, though, that I want to get to, that is very important, that does come back a couple of times. What are you prepared to do?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so he does bring up that line 3 or 4 more times in the movie.
Yes.
So now we are walking on the street, and so then he decides he does want another man, or Ness says, hey, we got to get another guy, but he doesn't know who to trust. And so this is where Malone says that's where he uses that famous line, if you're afraid of getting a rotten apple, don't go to the barrel, get it off the tree. So then they go to where these trainees are, these new cops that are just training to be cops, that haven't had an opportunity yet to be corrupted.
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's kind of the idea. And so they go and they ask for these. They say, who's your best shooter?
Yep.
And then the instructor says, well, we got two guys. We got, what was the first guy's name?
I was hoping it was going to be Steve Gutenberg, but it wasn't.
Bobcat
or
Goldthwait.
Sergeant Tackleberry.
You're right.
No.
From the police academy there in Chicago.
He was the gun guy. Now
Yes,
that would have been funny.
One guy comes out and Malone is interviewing. I don't remember the gentleman's name. And they just start questioning him about why he wants to be a police officer. And the guy gives a very plain Jane, by the book response. And Malone says to him, Brad,
the force. Help the force.
Don't give us the yearbook response.
there you go.
Right.
So they're not real impressed with the first guy. So now the camera pans over to the second guy, and this is where we see Andy Garcia for the first time in the shooting range.
Here it is, Brad. We got Andy Garcia.
Effing guy.
He is. He pulls
Yes.
his gun from the back of his waistband and shoots 6 perfect shots into the target. He's just this, cool dude, young. I mean, this was Garcia's 6th movie credit that he did. So he's very young in this film.
Well, and then they ask him the same question,
Mm-hmm.
and he just kind of rolls his eyes, and he goes, to protect the property and the people or whatever. And then he's just like, shut up with that, and then he pisses him off. Like he deliberately pisses him off to see how he would react in that situation. And basically says, what's your real name, Stone? And he goes, that is my real name. And I love this exchange where he goes back and forth.
Nice light humor, racist humor between the Irish and the Italians.
A little bit. Right. And then he tells him his real name, which is what some
Giuseppe. I can't remember his last name.
Yeah. Whatever it was. And he goes, I knew it. We got him.
Don't say
Italian
it.
Guy.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Don't use the real terms here.
Well, and then he pulls his gun and says, better than you stinking Irishman.
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, I like him.
Yeah, Malone loves him right away, right after that, because he sees he's a tough guy.
He kind of sees himself, I think, in him in some
He
ways.
absolutely does.
That's what we need. That's what we need to be able to. That's the attitude that we need for.
It's like when George Costanza told Steinbrenner that he thought he was doing a terrible job and he was the worst owner ever. Hire this man.
Yes.
I didn't think about that when I watched it, but I guess
Brad coming with the analogies on this one.
Okay, well, here's another one. Speaking of Costanza, so right after this, you got a scene where Garcia, Connery, and Costner are together in a room just, talking about stuff. And I just wrote down, as Costanza said in one episode, I come with a long, staunch history of heterosexuality. But my God, these 3 guys together... That is a room full of some man heat right there. And I know my wife loves Costner, and one of the first things I learned about her was how much she loved Sean Connery and his voice. And so I'm assuming she would really like that scene, and maybe she should have watched this movie with me. Maybe I'll watch it again.
I don't know what she's going to think about that last comment, but
staunch history of heterosexuality. I can look at 3 guys and say, those are some cool effing good-looking guys right there.
And and what are you prepared to do?
Yeah. And what are you prepared to do about it, Brad?
Nothing. Watch the rest of the movie.
Okay. All right. So now there starts to be a little optimism. We got something rolling here. We go back to the office. Now we got our group of 4 guys together, and then they get
Wallace
word
doesn't
of this.
quite fit into that man heat category. So
no, but he wants to.
It depends on what you're into. Yeah,
he's a good guy. I like him. He's my favorite.
He is a great guy.
So Malone tells them that they're going to go on a liquor raid, and he knows where the booze is. Everybody knows where the booze is. So they go to the gun cabinet and they pull out, their shotguns. They're going to go on this raid. And Wallace walks in and Malone says, what does he say? He says, do you have a band?
Carry a badge?
Yeah. They
Yes.
carry a gun.
And carry a gun.
And he grabs the gun and he looks at all his paperwork, and then he looks back at the gun in his other hand and he puts his paperwork down, and he's so excited to be carrying his shotgun. It was just great. It's like you could see Wallace grow a pair right there in the moment.
Yep.
Well, see, and he kind of fits that. It comes up again here when they go to Canada, but he kind of fits that whole campy, like his whole character is just kind of like almost like the funny comic relief in a way. And he's awesome.
He is.
Unfortunately, cut short coming up. Which I didn't know because I haven't seen this for so long. And so some of these scenes really shocked me and I was like sad.
Yeah. So you are Pete in this episode. You got the analogies.
Well, yeah, but this
forgetting
didn't
how
have
movies
one
go.
of the most memorable surprise endings in the history of cinema.
No, it didn't. That's
Oh my
fair.
God. Can we move on? Moving on. So
But yes, I'll still be compared to Pete for other reasons. It's
Sure.
okay.
yeah.
So,
So
I
now-
love when they go on this liquor raid. These 4 men with shotguns just
Yeah.
simply walk out the front of the police station, across the street, and into the federal post office to do a liquor
Right.
raid. This is where the booze is kept. This is where Capone's men are, in this back storeroom with barrels and
Yes.
boxes of booze, right under the noses of the federal government. It just shows again how much of a hold that Capone has, how much influence he has on this city, that he stores his booze at the post office.
I got the impression Malone knew for a
Mhm.
long time that this was here.
Yeah.
And he knew of a lot of other places too, but he was
Mhm.
just like, okay, we need a good start here. This is where we're going to make our first raid.
Right.
If you're going for that little hint of optimism, which is what they got out of this.
Yep.
I'm not sure if I would start with the post office, because that would be a pretty high value target
Mhm.
location. I would think they would have some other places they could start with, but it was a ballsy move. They barge right in there, and then where it gets campy for me is where the guy, the gangster guy, is just standing there. Hey, this isn't right. This is no good.
Right. Yes.
That's
Yeah,
his
very
line.
Guido-esque. Like, hey, what are you busting my balls here? Come on.
That's a good one. There's one when we get to Canada. I want to share the Costner one that I think is very similar to that. It's like, really, that's the line they went with there. Hey, this is no good.
And again, this is where Connery says everybody knows where the booze is. It's just nobody's prepared to go after it, and what are you prepared to do?
Right. Right. Exactly.
And he says right before they bust the door down, once we go through this door, there's no turning back.
No turning back.
Yep.
And now they're heroes.
Yep.
And I don't know what you got next, Pete, but my next note is, De Niro has a baseball bat.
Yes.
Yes. Now that's where we're getting to here.
This is the very next scene. Yep.
So we go to the dinner party, and by the way, we know that the guy that I just quoted, he is the one that is viewed in at least Capone's eyes as having botched it up, right? Because it was his operation that got foiled here, right? So that's sort of the motive and what we're about to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So now Capone is giving this inspirational speech, and it's using baseball as an analogy. Capone could be compared to you and me, Brad, because he uses a great analogy here about his team and how it's like a baseball team. And so he pulls out a baseball bat,
and he makes some great points about baseball.
And he's inspirational, and he has a bat, and he's angry with it, and it's very much
visual aid.
How I feel quite often in the classroom.
That's right. Oh my! All right, I might want to cut that.
Yeah, we might need that.
If there's ever an incident, no, but so
there's not going to be an incident. So I think that's a pretty clear joke.
Accuracy of this film. This is something that actually did happen.
Oh, really?
With the difference of that he bludgeoned to death 2 people.
Oh my God!
Not 1.
I read 3.
Oh, I read 3 different names.
I read 4,
and there weren't sure if it was this guy and this guy, or definitely this guy, and then it might have been the second guy might have been different.
So here's how I read it went down. Now, it wasn't the motive in real life. The motive was not because somebody botched an operation. The motive was because he had found out these 3 guys were plotting to kill Capone.
Yes.
And Capone got word of that.
Mhm.
That was the motivation. And he actually did have this dinner party, and it was very similar. He got them all drunk. And then that's when he went for this kill. And
Yep.
so he actually then had his bodyguards tie them up in their chairs so that they couldn't move. He then bludgeons them. And then he has the bodyguards, just for good measure, shoot each
'em.
one in the head.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's how that went down in real life. But
Yep.
my
Yikes.
goodness. And then you leave the scene with this very grisly image of the guy head down on a table with the blood just gushing out all
Yep.
over the table.
Yeah,
So
very,
now
very
you know who you're
powerful
met.
scene.
Right.
And what
And
is
that was,
do you remember the SNL sketch where this happened? Wasn't that, do you remember who it was and how they did it? Because I just remembered it and I can't remember the details.
Do you remember
I
I vaguely remember it. I would have to go back and
all right.
check.
Do you remember around the cast, like who might have been part of the
sure
show?
it's Dana
like around this
Carvey.
time, like I think John Lovitz was involved as either the guy with the bat, or I'm not sure though. I'm gonna have to look that one
I'll
up
have to go like
because
that. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So, oh, by the way, on that scene, De Niro acting, I love the shot of De Niro just before he kills him, because the one guy says something and then De Niro does this little glance over at him. And you know that he's like, there's something in his glare right there, right before he kills him, that he's like, oh, you that's what you're going to bring up or whatever.
Right.
And then he beats the shit out of him.
Yep.
oh yeah,
So-
I found it already.
Who is
It's
it?
Phil Hartman. He's playing Ronald Reagan.
Oh, yes.
And Ronald
Okay. I
Reagan
vaguely
is
remember.
giving the speech in the White
Isn't it
House.
like George Bush involved too? Like he
And
bludgeons.
fast forwarding, I missed it. Anyway, it's Ronald Reagan,
Okay.
and he just blows somebody's head off with the bat.
So then after that, we go back to Ness's office again, and the accountant is still talking about the income taxes. He won't shut up about the income taxes, and like he keeps trying to convince the rest of the group that, hey, this income tax thing has got some, like you said, some teeth to it or some hooks to it. And then we are encountered by a suspicious guy that walks into the office.
Mhm.
And Ness asks the others to leave, and so he wants to have this conversation with him, and then he drops money on the desk, and this is where the term untouchable comes into play.
Right.
It's because Capone is going to, and actually did in real life, try to buy off these officers and the police, but
Mhm.
Ness and his cohorts could not be touched, no matter what
Right.
they offered him. Now,
And he
in
was
real
told.
life,
Oh, go ahead.
no, in real life, the fact is that Ness actually was offered many times by Capone, and Capone offered as much as $2,000 a week, which in today's dollars would equate to $30,000 a week.
Mhm.
So,
Right.
what were you going to say, Gifford?
Well, and again, this is one of the things where Capone, one of the reasons they're the Untouchables also is that Capone knew that if he killed a Treasury officer, it would
Yeah.
bring more heat on him than what he could handle. So as far
Yes.
as this unit went, his best course of action was to try to buy them off because
Yeah.
he knew he couldn't kill any of them.
He said, yeah, he told his men, whatever you do not kill any of these guys. That's
Right.
that's I guess why they're Untouchables.
But
But
again,
he
that
uses the
that
line.
scene was true to form. That he
Right.
was offered money. Now they only showed it the one time, but he was offered money repeatedly to,
Yeah.
to go with the case.
I had thought about that, and I didn't know that fact, before. But I thought about that a couple of times. Well, you'd think that Capone would be able to kill any of these guys, which I guess he did. But you'd think he would have gotten to Ness eventually in real life. But that was the reason why.
I think the issue
So-
is despite the fact that he does own Chicago, these are
Yes.
federal agents, and if you bring the federal government down on you, it's a whole different story than Chicago
Right.
cops.
Yeah. Yep. So then here's the famous scene that that my college roommate would always repeat this line where Ness goes home at night, and he's sees a suspicious car, or there's somebody. He's getting out of his car and going into his house, and somebody yells, "Nice house!" I said, "Nice house."
I say.
Like what?
It's like it's Foghorn Leghorn. I say, nice house.
Right. And so then it's this obviously very suspicious guy that's sitting in the car, and is threatening him in a way by saying a man should take. It's nice to have a family. A man should take care, make sure that nothing happens to him.
Right.
And so then now Ness is terrified because he runs into the house, tries to make sure that his wife and daughter are okay, which they are. You get this little moment of terror in a moment when he looks in his bed and sees that she's not there, but then she's just in her desk over in the other part of the room. So
now the one main female character in the movie is shipped away for her safety. So it is just all the guys left.
Patricia Clarkson plays Ness's wife. And that person who says that line was an actual member of Capone's squad. That was Nitty. And he plays a prominent role throughout this film as kind of his main wet work guy. If you need somebody dead, Nitty's the guy you contact, and he's going to take care of some business.
That'd be a fun job.
Would it now?
I kind of want, yeah. Wouldn't it?
All right.
I mean,
good deal.
Probably pays well, you know.
I would think so. Yeah.
How many hours a day do you have to work, really?
Yeah, probably. Well, it's all in the setup. It's all the prep work. You know, it's like true. Hunting deer. You know, you got to go set your stand up, find out where they're going. You know, it's all the the legwork that really puts a damper on your social life.
We digress.
Yes, we do.
So now we get to a really cool scene. Now we're at the Canadian border. So they're going to try to intercept the shipment at the border, which is going to be a really big deal. And so they're trying to work with these the Canadian Mounties as well. They are cooperative at first, but then they don't. A little later, they don't approve of how we do things here.
Right. And they also jumped the gun on the raid too, which
the Canadians are the ones that jumped the gun, right? Yep. So it's like, who are you to talk about our methods, right?
Well, and this is another great scene in the film, but again, not an event that actually occurred in real life.
Right.
Yep.
It starts out by that they're all just in the cabin. This gang of 4 people is in the cabin, just right near the Canadian bridge. And I think that this actually was filmed in Montana because they love the. Did you look this up too, Gifford?
I can't remember if it was Missouri or Montana, but yes, it was one of the two. Yep.
They're all just fidgety, and this is where Connery or Malone just he's showing his veteran status by he's just telling everyone to calm down, don't worry about it. Just when the moment hits, the moment will hit. Yeah. So I like how his character was pretty relaxing in this part of it, not so much a little later. He gets a little tougher later.
Yes.
So then everything starts to begin. They start to see some movement across the bridge, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the Canadians just start randomly shooting. And if you watch, they're just all over the place. They just have these little handguns, and they're just not even aiming.
Well, how don't you shoot the guy who's in front of you? Like, how do the guys in the back, when they're on the bridge, not shoot their compatriot in the back of the head?
Yeah, exactly.
Just not the greatest action sequence in the movie, but it's still an awesome scene.
Right. It was a great shootout, and then this is where Malone is like, you only live once or something like that. Let's just go.
Yep.
And so he was kind of having fun with it. He was like looking forward to it. And so it was a great shootout. Again, here's where the campiness. I had the word campy written down, Brad. But it's a pretty campy scene, but it's a great scene at the same time. Like how wild and zany the whole thing.
Well, and what's Oscar's body count in this scene? Because he's the one who does the most damage.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, he
like-
does all the shooting, and then at the end he stops and drinks the liquor. I mean, it's
Yeah.
kind of funny. That's where
Right.
like you're talking about, Pete. He
Right.
steals the scene here.
Yep.
Yes.
He's even good at hand-to-hand combat when he runs out of bullets. He just charges the
Except-
guy and knocks him out with the butt of his gun. Like
And it was
he's
very
just
upsetting when it didn't end well for him there. Or no, sorry, this was later.
And-
This is the next scene.
Don't
Yeah.
give it away, man.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
we got
he's
the
also
interrogation
hero.
scene yet.
Well,
Go ahead.
he's also the hero again in this scene because the key piece of evidence that they found was the accounting book, the ledger.
Yes.
And so they have the accountant there that can help start to interpret what some of this is. And then they're figuring out who Al Capone is. It's like, some other AC name that they think is
the
coded.
ledger's encoded, correct? With
Right,
all the
right.
with the whole money, how the money flows from one entity to the other, and how Al Capone is gotten payments. So this is what
And how
they
it's recorded.
need in order to tie Capone to all of these businesses that he runs.
So
Right.
during this scene is where the line I referenced earlier comes in, because Kevin Costner, he doesn't want to do anything bad, but he has to kill a guy. And he goes, "Oh, didn't you hear what I said? What, are you deaf?"
Right. Yes.
Not really your classic bad guy line after shooting somebody. Are you deaf?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's just getting frustrated with these guys. I mean, that's kind of the point of that line. I thought it's like, come on.
Right.
It's like he's just he's had it up to here. And it's like, come on, why don't you just cooperate with us?
Right.
And so that was where they do have one of the guys, there's two guys there. One of them was dead already. But the other guy that they had captured didn't know that. And so Malone grabs the other guy outside that's already dead and just demands that he starts talking. And of course, he's not going to. And then he puts his gun in his mouth and just pops him.
Double
And
kills.
blood all over the place.
The old double tap.
It's
Yeah.
like Zombieland.
So now the guy who's being interrogated, he's more than happy to cooperate as he sees how far Malone will go, because he believes Malone just shot one of the guys on his team in the face. So the one thing I had on this was I love that the ledger says ledger on it. Like, I thought, like, when they were buying this booze, they would literally come out with bags of money with the dollar sign on it as well.
That's another The
That's a
Simpsons.
good
Remember
one.
that one where they described the classic burglar? He was carrying a sack with a money sign on it and wearing striped pajamas.
Yes. Like a
Classic
band
burglar.
across his eyes or whatever. Yeah.
And then we close out the scene with the famous line where the Canadian Mountie guy goes to Ness. He goes, "I do not approve of your methods." And then Costner says, "What?" I thought you were gonna. No, he goes, "Yeah, well, you're not from Chicago."
Oh yeah, you're not from Chicago. Okay, I thought he said
I
shut
thought
up.
you were gonna nail that one. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. No, I didn't have that one written down.
All right. So then they're all back and celebrating that there was a subpoena. They got a subpoena eventually. We're back now in Chicago. They got the subpoena and they're all kind of celebrating and everything. But then we go to the ominous elevator scene where I keep forgetting. What's the accountant guy's name?
Oscar is going to he's escorting their prisoner.
Yes.
And so they're in the police station, so you'd think he'd be pretty safe. He's escorting the prisoner, and they get onto the elevator. And of course, the cop who is running the elevator is actually Nitty, the wet work guy for Capone. And he, of course, shoots the prisoner as well as Wallace in the elevator.
Right.
And then prints on the wall of the elevator in their blood the word touchable.
Yes.
He did that really fast.
Yeah, I thought that too.
I was going to say, yeah, you wasted a lot of time there.
That was a little risky.
Yes, it was.
Not his first time, I'm guessing then.
Maybe he
Like
must,
Joey unhooking a shirt.
Yeah, not my first time.
So then now Elliot Ness is really pissed off, and so he goes to the hotel where Capone
stays.
lives. He's going to confront him, and he asked at the front desk. What was it? He just asked at the front desk, "Hey, is Al Capone here?"
Right. Which he does.
Which he does, and he says no, he hasn't seen him. But then, of course, Capone is coming down the steps, and so then he does confront him, and there's a good little scene between the two, and he's very threatening. He's yelling at him. They're yelling at each other, but nothing really happens, which you would think,
Right.
now
All
Ness
those
is kind of
guns
getting
and hot
under his
tempers.
skin. Yes. But everything worked out okay there.
Which again, this is another falsehood in the plot that Ness and Capone never actually met face to face.
Right.
So,
then you have the DA that's going to drop charge. The DA says he's going to drop charges because the key witness, is now dead. So there's nothing they can do, and so that's kind of a down spot in the movie. And you also get to the two old guys fighting. That would be Malone and the other.
That's what I said. I said old guy fight.
yeah.
Old guy fight.
The
Between
captain
Connery
or
and the captain.
Yep.
I don't know what his name
Yep.
was.
Yeah,
Yes,
a lot of
yes.
Irish accents thrown around.
Oh yeah, there's some thick accents there.
Right, and
Well,
this
it's
is where you learn that because throughout the movie, Malone keeps coming to Ness with all of this information. Like, there's going to be, this transfer at the border, and he's always got this great information. And we come to find out that he's been pressuring this captain for all of the information. This is where he gets it from. So, and now he's pressuring him again because he wants to find out where the bookkeeper is. If they can get their hands on the bookkeeper, they can follow through with this case because they lost their first witness. So.
And I think that the reason for the fight, if I'm not mistaken, is that the captain is getting worried because they're getting too close, and he's putting both of themselves as well as the entire police force at risk.
Yes.
And so this whole operation that they've got going is now being put at risk because they're just going too far with it.
Right. Well, in the scene where Oscar gets killed, Nettie kills a policeman to get the uniform, and you see the captain see that police officer killed and how much that weighs on him.
And he kind of crosses himself.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. So, but he gets the information, and then heads back to his apartment, Malone's apartment. And this is another just amazing scene in this movie.
Yeah, I love this scene. And
the camera work is just awesome.
The whole thing is like this one shot following. It reminded me of the movie Rear Window, which is one of my all-time favorite movies. Just seeing into the windows. It was, it's a different scene, but that's totally going back in time and seeing through these big windows. And at night, it just totally had that feel. And it's all through the point of view of this guy who you never see him. Right. Because it's through his eyes, and it's just really cool.
So this henchman is basically trying to break into Malone's apartment we assume to kill him in his apartment.
Yes.
Of course.
And so he's going back and forth, and Malone is doing these innocent things, like I think he had something on the stove, and then he also had
something to drink.
He's playing some music, goes to the record player. But then he did suspect that something was going on, and so he turned a gun on him. And of course, from repeating the line from earlier in the movie, the gangster or hitman had a knife while Malone had a gun, so he thinks he's got it made. So then he just kind of chases him out.
An Italian to bring a knife to a gunfight, basically.
Right. He could have blown him away right there. But instead he just kind of chases him out. I guess he didn't want the mess in his apartment, which I don't blame him. So but he did get a mess in his apartment because he chases him out only to find that it was Nitty right outside and actually shot him up really good. And now
shot him up really good.
This is a scene where it's a great scene all around. The acting on this part, though, is a little weird to me.
Yeah, it's a little tough. Well, just when he dies,
I remember
like,
this is one where our friend Griebel, who we've talked about on the show before, he would cackle at this particular moment, and we've talked about this many times back in high school. As soon as Sean Connery gets shot, it's like he just stands there. There's like 10 seconds, and then he's like, "Oh!" he goes and falls back into the apartment.
Spins a little bit and then falls dramatically back into the house.
It's coming later, but what's worse to me is that he gets shot like 55 times, and then he's not dead. I mean, they could have, they didn't need to do that.
And not only that, he's able to drag himself back all the way through his apartment and still be alive when Ness,
like an hour later.
Yeah, when
how
Ness
many
shows
hours
up in
later?
his apartment.
Who knows? That's what bugged me.
It could have been 5 minutes. Who knows?
Right.
But anyway, how long it was.
Malone's down at this point. Connery shows up at his apartment. You know, I'm assuming police were called because of the massive amount of gunshots that the neighbors had heard. And he finds Malone in his apartment, and Malone is still alive, and he has a piece of paper with the train assignment.
Just long enough so he can say the word train.
Well, and not only that. Dead. But what else does he say? Doesn't he say once again for the last time?
Yes.
What are you
prepared
to
do?
Right.
Like choking on his own blood.
I honestly thought he was doing a Yoda impression.
I don't think it was necessary. I think he could have found this train ticket or whatever that was. He would have put it together, and Connery could have been dead. He's still prepared to do anything because he's going to be pissed off. Right. So.
Yep.
Right. Okay.
That's probably if I have a biggest criticism of the movie, it's the fact that Connery lives for however long that is just to say one word.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So now we're down to just two. We're down to Garcia's character and Ness, and they head off to the train station.
Hey, hang on though. During this time, you've got De Niro at the opera watching Pagliacci talking about.
That's right.
Seinfeld again. Crazy Joe Davola's on the stage. Pagliacci. A sad clown.
Sorry. Yes.
All right, moving on.
So now we do get to.
But thanks to Seinfeld, I know all that.
I completely agree with you, Pete. This is the best scene in the movie.
Well, it's
this scene was reenacted in, I think it was Naked Gun 2.5 or 33 1/3.
I think it's 33 1/3. It's one of the scenes.
Might have been.
Yeah.
Yes. OJ was in it. And it's just a fantastic scene. Now they know where the bookkeeper is going to be. The bookkeeper is now their key witness that they need to get. They need to keep him alive. That is the goal here. Yep. They need to capture him, keep him alive, but that's not going to be easy because he's going to be well guarded, which he was. And so now you have Stone and Ness at different stations at the train station. I mean, they're the same train station. I'm saying that they're stationed in different locations, strategically in the train station. So Costner has the higher ground, kind of watching over everything that's going on. And then now you have this ominous clock that's ticking that just gets under your skin, right? And then also you have. There's nobody else, basically. It's late at night. You've got this janitor that's cleaning up, and then you have this woman that has a baby in a stroller that is trying to get the stroller up the stairs. This is before the days of elevators, apparently.
And in 1930s, not only that, but strollers were like 500 pounds and the size of a small car.
Right. And this child is crying, and it's it's so tense. They build this scene up so well. And it's just amazing. So this woman, she's got two bags, a stroller and a crying baby, trying to, drag all of it up, 2 flights of stairs here. And Costner is standing above her at a railing, watching all of this. And he wants to help her, but at the same time, he needs to stay in his spot to, because the bookkeeper and his men are going to show up at any second here.
He's very concerned that she's going to blow the whole operation, and she's putting herself and the child in danger.
Yep.
She is none the wiser.
So he finally decides to abandon his post, run down the stairs to help this woman.
To get her out of there more quickly.
To get her out of there.
He knows what's going to happen.
Yep. So he takes the stroller, he drags that up the steps with the baby in it. They get just to the top of the stairs, and the henchmen start to file in.
Yep.
And
And then all hell breaks loose.
Yes, all hell breaks loose because one of the henchmen recognizes him, and of course he spins around with his shotgun ready and shoots the first henchman. And as he does that, bumps the baby carriage with the baby in it, and it starts ever so slowly rolling back down the stairs. And this awesome gunfight,
And you got the
ensues.
sound of it every step as it falls.
Yep, as it falls down the steps. And of course, the gunshots alert Stone, who comes running back to the staircase. But at this point, Ness has done a pretty good job so far of fending these guys off and killing a couple. But with Stone coming back in, he throws Ness a gun because he's out of shells, and slides just in time to catch the stroller before it hits the bottom and the kid goes flying. And now we have this amazing standoff between the last henchman, who has the bookkeeper held at gunpoint, and Ness and Stone have him in his sights. And
Stone, who is still pinned under the carriage.
Yep, holding the baby
he's got
carriage.
His foot. Right.
Yep. He's laying basically on his back, holding, got his foot up against the baby carriage. He's got it stopped, and he's got his gun drawn, and he's got this henchman in his sights. But of course, he's got the bookkeeper in front of him with a gun to his head, and he's telling him that, he's going to kill the bookkeeper, and he's going to walk out of there with the bookkeeper, whatever. But this henchman's getting out of there alive. So
I don't know a lot about guns.
Okay.
But you got this handgun, revolver, right? And from that distance, from that angle, it seems like that would be a hell of a shot.
That would be a hell of a shot. But we know that Stone was picked because he was
I get that, but
one of the best shots. But this leads me to one of the best lines in the movie between Stone and Costner's character, where this henchman is just he's going nuts. He's saying, "I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him."
So and counting down from 5.
Yep. And Costner just kind of looks at Stone, says, "Do you got him?" And Stone goes, "Yeah, I got him."
Just totally confident as hell.
Yep.
Underneath that stroller.
Costner puts his own gun down, and the guy starts counting to 5, and he's going to shoot the bookkeeper. And just before he says 2, Costner says, "Take him." And boom, just like that, right through the head, just a perfect shot. He falls dead to the ground, and they've got the bookkeeper in their custody at that point.
Now, this scene was one of the greatest scenes in cinema history, but it was not supposed to happen that way. It was supposed to be filmed on a train, not the train station. However, they determined that to get an old style 1930s train, it would have been too expensive to do the scene that they wanted to do, how they wanted to do it. And so then that's how they changed it to the train station, and you have what you got. And
this was so great. Just amazing.
Yes. All right. So now what happens? Now we go to the court. We actually now have the bookkeeper who is on the witness stand because that was the goal. Now he's testifying, and he knows he's screwed either way. The bookkeeper is going to be dead. If he didn't die in that shootout, it's like, okay, now he's basically crying on the witness stand because he knows that he's toast, and so he starts testifying. And then another good a good little setup happens between what's his name, Nitty. So he hands something to Capone, and Ness sees this little exchange and says, "Hey, you know what? He wants to talk to him outside the court." So he tells the bailiff, "This guy's got a gun, so let's take this outside." He didn't care. His concern wasn't the gun in the courtroom, which is illegal, but that was the excuse to get him out of the room because he wanted to talk to him and ask him a few questions and keep him out of the courtroom because he didn't want him helping Capone. During this exchange, it's right outside the courtroom. He drops his matchbook. He asks him to empty his pockets. A matchbook is really important, is on the table. And then he's like about to give up, lights a cigarette, or this Ness we're talking about, lights a cigarette by opening the matchbook and sees 1634 Racine, which of course was Malone's address. So then he was able to put the pieces together that this was the guy that killed Malone.
Yep.
And so then we have another great chase scene, this time up to the rooftop, which this gets a little goofy too. This whole scene.
Yep.
But it was fun to watch, and kind of back and forth, and it ends up with Nitty hanging from a rope off the side of the building.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, he's climbing down the rope, and then eventually he knows he's busted, so he starts climbing back up the rope because he's going to be dead.
If he continues
run,
yeah.
Then he helps him back up on the roof. Ness helps Nitty back up on the roof, and then he decides he's going to insult him. He's going to insult Malone, which Ness wasn't having any of that. So eventually he gets pushed off. He gets pushed off the building.
Yes,
and the scream was classic Wile E. Coyote, right?
Well, not only that, but there's a terrible green screen.
Yes, right.
There's a terrible green screen, and it's a very Alan Rickman-like death. From Die Hard.
Yes.
Yep. Well, and not only that, but right before that, you talk about this great scene. There's a part in the chase where you think Costner has fallen to his death off the roof because he has to roll out of the way because Nitty's shooting at him. And Nitty goes up to the edge of the building thinking that he's dead, and Costner just falling down to a ledge a little further and shoots him in the hat. His hat goes flying off. So again, with a little bit of the campy,
it's like a cartoon.
Right, yeah.
So it's like a Yosemite Sam shot.
The one thing I thought was a little strange is that, there's that scene where Nitty's crawling down the rope to try to escape, and Costner's standing above him with his gun drawn. He's ready to shoot him, but it's an unarmed man in a vulnerable position. He can't bring himself to shoot the guy. But then as soon as Nitty says something bad about Malone, he's more than happy to throw him off the roof to his death.
That's the big deal here in this scene is that he Mr. Morals loses them and actually kills the guy when he had other options.
Well, and the great line after this scene is Garcia's character asks him where Nitty is, and Ness's reply is he's in the car. Because, of course, when he throws him off the roof,
now that's good. See, that's much better than "What are you deaf?" Oh, come on.
So when he throws Nitty off the roof, he falls to his death, crashing through the hood of a car. And Ness's reply is he's in the car.
All right. So court is still going on while this is happening up.
Yeah, this is the thing. I thought, aren't these two guys bringing up any, aren't people noticing this or all this shooting?
Yep.
It just seems like nobody else in the world noticed what was going on. It seemed a little much.
It was up on the rooftop of the courthouse, so nobody.
I know. It's a lot of screaming and shooting, though.
So we come to find out
that just out the window.
We come to find out that the note that Nitty had passed to Capone was a list of jurors, and that they had been bought off.
Of course they were.
So now Ness is concerned that the trial is just a farce. All the jurors are going to, acquit Capone. So everybody's called into the judge's chambers. And this is something I can't believe is actually legally doable, but he convinces the judge that this is happening and that the judge needs to do something about it. The case can't go on as is. Mm-hmm. So the judge decides to switch the juries because obviously these new jurors were not paid off. But that's not how it works. You can't just...
Seems like kind of a sitcom ending.
Yeah. But I thought the same thing. I found that actually did happen in the Capone case. The judge did switch the juries. And that was because, and it was because they found out that the jurors were getting paid off. That was a fun fact that I came across.
Okay, so now the juries
I
are
didn't think it would be legal. I think there'd be if today there'd be all kinds of appeals and everything. But
so the judge switches the juries. Capone gets upset. His lawyer takes it upon himself to change his client's plea from not guilty to guilty. Which again,
just like that,
you can't do that as a lawyer.
That part I didn't agree with.
You can't change your client's plea without his permission.
Right.
And so there it is. Now he's guilty. Everything's wonderful, and there's cheers, and Ness gets his man, which I thought was a bit strange. And the other thing is, too, another falsehood in this plot is that Ness and his team actually had no part in the conviction of Capone on tax evasion.
In tax evasion. He did bring many charges against Capone, but not anything related to tax evasion in real life.
Correct.
Yes. But a great movie all around. I mean, yeah, there's some goofy parts. I still love the movie. I kind of even love it for the goofy parts at times.
Well, it's goofy stylish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's see. I think we actually covered about all the fun facts that I had. So
yeah, I think
one other one that I did find that we did not get to. They did consider later on, after this movie was released and it was successful, they considered making a prequel to it, starring Nicolas Cage as Al Capone and Gerard Butler as Malone, as a younger Malone. That was one thing that was considered, but it got scrapped. I don't know why. Nick Cage is Al Capone.
Did you happen to find out like when they were thinking about doing that? Did it say?
It maybe have said, and I didn't write it down. I don't know.
Okay.
They also did make a video game on Super Nintendo based on the movie. I vaguely remember the game. I never played it or anything, so I don't know it, but I remember it being out there.
Okay.
So
interesting.
Other than that, I think that wraps up the movie, unless anybody has anything else to add about it.
No, a great pick, Pete. I really enjoyed rewatching this one.
Yeah, I like, it's good to watch because even though there might be falsehoods, he did go to jail, and it's good to watch this guy who's just above the law, does whatever he wants, and actually gets what's coming to him, which doesn't happen. But at the same time, it's depressing too, because you know that half the people that did it to him are corrupt, and there's just so much corruption everywhere you look, and you can't avoid it. And it's just that's what it made me think of, is like, yuck. That's just everything around you, and it hasn't gotten any better. That's for sure.
That's right. He got what was coming to him, all right?
Because it just makes me sick. I hate it.
He got what was coming to him because in prison he died of syphilis.
Oh, wonderful!
That's how Capone.
Well, now
died.
That's a really happy ending.
Yes. So, so this being our only movie episode of this month, this would be the natural time to discuss our top movies of 1987. And man, is it a long list.
Yes.
And we mentioned a lot already. So if you didn't listen
we
to
did,
the 2
so we
week
can
ago
kind of fly
episode,
through them, but
go back and check it out. You get more there.
Yeah. I came across a couple of other ones too this time around, but why don't we start with Gifford?
Okay.
And then we'll finish it off with myself, since this is my episode.
Well, I really didn't list any honorable mentions because we did discuss so many movies in our episode with Johnny. So I'm just going to go through my top 5. So at number 5, I have Lethal Weapon. At number 4, Dirty Dancing. Number 3, Princess Bride. Number 2, Predator. And my number 1 is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Automobile?
Automobile?
All right. So I had a hard time deciding, because this is at a time where I watched a lot of these movies, and I'm like, do I pick the movies that I watched that year, or do I pick the movies that I like, still love the most now? So like, I don't remember the first time exactly that I watched The Princess Bride. It is one of my top 5 movies of all time, but I didn't put it in my top 5 for this year because I decided to go with the 5 movies I remembered watching during that time the most.
Sure.
All right.
And to be fair, I didn't watch any of these movies in actual 1987.
And like another one, Can't Buy Me Love, which I've seen a million times, but I know I didn't see it probably till 3 years later sometime on VHS. Okay. So I don't know how I came up with this, but I remember watching I mentioned on our previous one, The Witches of Eastwick was something I watched on TV like many, many times, and my family had watched it. So that was my number 5. Number 4, Police Academy 4. We brought up Police Academy earlier.
Yep, Citizens on Patrol.
And those were ones I watched a buttload of back then. I had Planes, Trains, and Automobiles number 3. And then my top 2 were 2 that I saw in the theater and just watched over and over and over after that. Number 2, Dragnet, and number 1, Spaceballs.
Very good.
Because those are the 2 movies. I think those are the only 2 on my list. Well, you know what? I might have seen Throw Mama from the Train in the movie theater, if I remember right. But it wouldn't, and it was good, but it wouldn't quite crack my, top 5 or anything. But those are the 2 I remember going to specifically when and where, and loved those movies as an 11-year-old.
Cool.
All right. I'm just going to rattle off my list of honorable mentions here. I got a couple on here that we haven't talked about, that you guys didn't mention, and we didn't talk about in the other episode. I think I got 2 or 3 here. But I have honorable mention, Dirty Dancing, Can't Buy Me Love, Lost Boys, Adventures in Babysitting.
Yeah, I got that on my list too.
3 Men and a Baby, Throw Mama from the Train, Predator, Beverly Hills Cop 2, Roxanne.
That's on my list.
Secret of My Success, Lethal Weapon, and Raising Arizona.
Yep.
Nicolas Cage
on my list. Yes.
Secret of My Success. Good one. I watched
a
lot of
good one. Yep.
And then my top 5 list, all movies that we've talked about. Number 5, Princess Bride. Number 4, Dragnet. Spaceballs, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and The Untouchables.
You remembered to include on your top 5 the item
did.
that we actually talked about?
Because there's the first one I'm making my list now. Oh, the number 1. That's why it's number 1.
Sure.
The first one I wrote down. So
excellent.
There we have it. Wow, that was a great episode.
Yeah. Excellent subject.
Yes.
I enjoyed it greatly.
So.
Well, what we're doing next week? We will be covering Def Leppard's Hysteria album.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
If you're talking about something that was important to the 11-year-olds at the time, that would be the one.
Absolutely.
Yes. I can't wait for that one. Are you ready for a little Preacher Row?
I am.
Always.
You're the Def Leppard of Tyler.
Yes, I completely agree.
All right, here they are.
Not deaf, so you can listen to them.
Absolutely.
What are you, deaf?
Oh, man.
Leopard. Oh, that would have been great if you would have said, "What are you, deaf?" Leopard.
Well, you just did it, Pete.
All right.
Bye.
All right. Here endeth the lesson.
Oh, I was going to say that. Never.
No one's here to comfort me. Sorry for what I have done. Sorry that your son is gone. 7 steps and it will be my last. And start to me on my path. I turn and I look to you. I'm scared but there's nothing